My parents told me I needed to move back home to raise my brother's 3 kids. Said no. They brought a real estate agent to my house to sell it without my permission. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because this story isn't just about parents who tried to sell my house without permission. It's about realizing the people who raised you see you as a solution to their problems, not as a person with your own life. It's about understanding that family helps family is code for you sacrifice everything while your sibling gets a free pass. So tell me in the comments, have you ever been the backup plan? The one they only remember when they need something? Let's talk about it. My name is Claire. I'm 29 years old. I'm an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. And I own a 3-bedroom house that I bought last year after saving every single penny from my salary for 6 years straight. That house represents everything I worked for. Every overtime hour. Every skipped vacation. Every time I ate leftovers for a week to put more money into my down payment fund. It's not just a house. It's proof that I built something for myself when nobody else was paying attention. It's proof that the invisible daughter could become visible on her own terms. My brother Tyler is 34. He has 3 kids under 10. Emma who's 9, Jackson who's 7, and little Sophie who's 5. 6 months ago, his wife Melissa packed 2 suitcases, walked out the door, and moved to Oregon with some guy she met online. Just left. No custody battle. No gradual transition. She signed away her parental rights and disappeared like their entire life together was a rough draft she decided to abandon. Left Tyler with 3 traumatized kids, a mortgage he can barely manage on his construction salary, and a life that imploded overnight. My parents stepped in immediately. Course they did. Because that's what they've always done for Tyler. They pick the kids up from school every single day. They make dinner. They help with homework. They deal with bedtime routines, meltdowns, tantrums, and everything in between. They're both in their early 60s. And they're completely exhausted. My mom's back is destroyed from lifting Sophie, who still wants to be carried everywhere. My dad canceled his golf membership because he has no free time anymore. Their entire lives have become managing Tyler's crisis. And here's the thing, they never complained. Not at first. They just quietly rearranged their entire existence around his needs like that was the natural order of things. About 3 months ago the hints started. Casual comments about how big my house was for just one person. Questions about whether I got lonely, rattling around in all that space. Mentions of how convenient it would be if someone lived closer to help with the kids. I ignored them. I'd spent my entire childhood learning to ignore subtext. Learning to pretend I didn't notice when conversations shifted away from me. Learning to smile politely when my achievements were acknowledged with the enthusiasm you'd give a participation trophy. Then the hints became less subtle. Direct questions about whether I'd ever considered moving back home. Suggestions that I could save money on my mortgage if I just sold my place and moved into my childhood bedroom. Comments about how family helps family in times of need. That phrase, family helps family. I heard it so many times it started to sound like a threat. Because what they meant was, you help family. Specifically, you help Tyler. You always have. You always will. That's your role. I didn't argue. I didn't push back. I just kept saying I was busy, that I'd think about it, that we'd talk later. All the deflections I'd learned growing up when I wanted to avoid a conversation I knew I'd lose. Because saying no to my parents has never been an option that ended well. Growing up, everything revolved around Tyler. His football games. His travel teams. His athletic scholarships. His future. His dreams. His needs that were always somehow more urgent than mine. I raised myself. I made my own meals starting at age 11 because mom and dad were always at Tyler's practices. I did my own laundry because nobody had time to teach me. They were too busy washing his team uniforms. I took the bus everywhere because the car was always needed to drive him to games 3 towns over. I forged permission slips when they forgot to sign them because they were at another one of his tournaments. I became invisible because there was no room for me in a house that orbited around my brother's potential. When I graduated high school with honors, top 5% of my class, acceptance letters from 3 universities, a partial scholarship to state school. They missed my graduation ceremony. Tyler had a playoff game. 3 hours away. They promised they'd make it back in time. They didn't. I walked across that stage, shook the principal's hand, accepted my diploma, and stood in the parking lot afterward watching other families take photos and celebrate while I called my mom to ask when they'd be home. She said they'd celebrate when I got back. We never did. When I bought my house last year, the biggest accomplishment of my life, the thing I'd worked toward since I was 23 years old, putting away money while my friends were traveling and going out and living their 20s. My parents didn't come see it for 3 months. 3 months. They finally showed up because Mom needed to borrow my printer. Walked through the door, made a comment about it being bigger than expected, used the printer and left. They never asked for a tour. Never asked about my mortgage. Never acknowledged that their invisible daughter had done something worth celebrating. So when the hints about moving back home started, I knew exactly what was happening. I was being recruited to solve Tyler's problem. Not asked. Recruited. Because asking would imply I had a choice. And in my family, when Tyler needs something, everyone else's choices become irrelevant. Last month, it escalated in a way I didn't see coming. They showed up at my house on a Saturday morning. Unannounced. I opened the door still in my pajamas, coffee in hand, confused about why they were standing on my porch at 9 a.m. My mom was smiling. That tight, nervous smile she uses when she's about to ask for something big. And standing next to her was a woman I'd never seen before, holding a leather folder and wearing a blazer that screamed, "I'm a professional here to handle your business." My mom's voice was bright and overly cheerful when she said, "Claire, this is Patricia. She's a real estate agent who specializes in quick sales. We thought we'd schedule a showing of your house to get the process started." I stared at them, processing, my brain moving slowly through the words like they were written in a language I didn't quite speak. Patricia looked uncomfortable. Her smile was strained. She clearly sensed something was very wrong. "Process," I repeated. My mom pushed past me into my living room like she owned the place. "Yes, honey. We thought it would be easier if we just got things moving. You can sell your house, move back into your old bedroom, and help with Tyler's kids while Dad and I take a step back. We're exhausted, Claire. We can't keep doing this." Patricia pulled papers from her folder. Market comparisons. Pricing strategies. She'd already researched my property. My parents had given her my address, details about the house, everything. They'd scheduled this entire meeting without asking me. Without even telling me. My mom kept talking, her words spilling out faster now, like she'd rehearsed this speech and needed to get through it before I could interrupt. "We've already worked out a schedule. You'd handle morning drop-offs before work. We'd do afternoons and help with homework. We'd split weekends. Makes sense, Claire. You're not using all this space anyway. And Tyler needs help. The kids need stability." Dad stood by the door, arms crossed, nodding along. Patricia was still standing there with her folder, looking like she desperately wanted to disappear into the floor. My mom's smile was wobbling now, desperation creeping in around the edges. "This is the right thing to do," she said. "Any decent person would step up for family." And that's when something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a clean, quiet break. Like a rope that had been fraying for years finally giving way. Patricia grabbed her folder and muttered something about calling later to reschedule, even though we both knew there would be no rescheduling. She walked to her car so fast she was almost jogging, and I watched her pull away before I closed the door and turned back to my parents. My mom's smile had completely crumbled. Her hands were shaking slightly. Dad's arms were still crossed, but his jaw was tight. The air in my living room felt thick, charged with something that had been building for decades. My mom started first, her voice rising with that particular blend of hurt and manipulation she'd perfected over the years. "Claire, I don't understand why you're being like this. We're drowning. We're trying to help your brother and we're completely exhausted. We've sacrificed everything for you kids and now when we need help, you're just going to say no." Her eyes were already filling with tears. The kind of tears that were designed to make me feel guilty. The kind that had worked on me my entire childhood. But something was different this time. I wasn't 11 years old anymore, trying to figure out why nobody came to my science fair. I wasn't 17, standing alone in a graduation parking lot. I wasn't 28, waiting 3 months for my parents to acknowledge the biggest purchase of my life. I was 29, and I was done. "Let me ask you something," I said quietly. "When exactly did you decide I didn't matter?" Mom blinked, genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? Course you matter. You're our daughter." "Am I?" "Yes. Because I spent my entire childhood wondering if you'd even notice if I disappeared. Do you remember my high school graduation?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. Mom's mouth opened but nothing came out. "You don't," I said. "You weren't there. Tyler had a playoff game. You promised you'd make it back in time. You didn't." I walked across that stage alone. I stood in that parking lot and watched every other kid take pictures with their families while I called you asking when you'd be home. You said we'd celebrate later. We never did. Mom's face went pale. "Claire, that was years ago. You can't still be upset about." "I'm not finished," I said, my voice still calm but harder now. "Do you remember when I brought home straight A's in 10th grade? Well, don't. Because that same week Tyler made varsity and that's all anyone talked about for a month. Do you remember my college acceptance letters? Well, because Tyler had gotten a scholarship offer and we had to celebrate that. Do you remember literally anything I accomplished that didn't happen to coincide with Tyler needing something?" The silence was deafening. Dad finally spoke. His voice gruff and defensive. "That's not fair, Claire. We did our best. Tyler needed more attention because he had potential. He had opportunities. We were investing in his future. And what was I? Yes. A backup plan. A safety net you could ignore until you needed something. You were independent," Mom said quickly, like that explained everything. "You didn't need us the way he did. You were always so capable. So responsible." "I was 11 years old making my own meals," I said. "I was 12 doing my own laundry because nobody taught me. I had to figure it out from YouTube videos. I was 13 forging permission slips because you kept forgetting to sign them. I wasn't independent, Mom. I was neglected. There's a difference." Mom gasped like I'd slapped her. "How dare you? We provided for you. We gave you a home, food, education. You gave me the bare minimum required by law," I interrupted. "You kept me fed and clothed and enrolled in school. Congratulations. That's not parenting. That's meeting the legal definition of not committing child neglect. But actual parenting. Showing up to things that mattered to me. Celebrating my achievements. Noticing when I was struggling. You didn't do any of that. Because all of your emotional energy went to Tyler." Dad's face was red now. "This is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. Plenty of kids grow up with siblings who need more attention. You turned out fine." "I turned out fine despite you," I said. "Not because of you. I learned to raise myself because I had to. I learned not to need you because you made it clear you didn't have room for my needs. And now you're standing in my house. The house I bought with money I saved while you didn't even notice I existed. And you're asking me to give it all up to clean up Tyler's mess." "This isn't about Tyler's mess," Mom said, her voice breaking. "This is about family. This is about those 3 kids who need stability. This is about helping your brother during the hardest time of his life." "And what about the hardest times of my life?" "Yes. Who helped me then? When I was working 2 jobs to pay for college because you'd spent my college fund on Tyler's travel teams. When I was living in a studio apartment with a broken heater because I couldn't afford anything better while saving for a down payment. When I was eating rice and beans for months to put money away. Where was the family then?" Mom wiped her eyes. "You never asked for help." "I shouldn't have had to ask," I said. "You're my parents. You should have noticed. You should have cared. But you didn't. Because I wasn't Tyler. I wasn't the golden child with the bright future and the scholarships and the potential. I was just Claire. Capable Claire. Independent Claire. Claire who didn't need anything because it was easier for you to believe that than to actually see me. Dad stepped forward, his voice harder now, angrier. You're being selfish. Your brother is struggling. His wife abandoned him and 3 kids. He's barely keeping his head above water. And you're sitting here in this big house all alone refusing to help. What kind of person does that? The kind of person who learned from watching you, I said. You taught me that some people matter more than others. That some people's problems are emergencies while other people's problems are inconveniences. You taught me that Tyler's needs will always come before mine. You taught me that my value is measured by my usefulness. Well, congratulations. I learned the lesson. And I'm choosing not to be useful anymore. Mom's voice rose, desperate now. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. You owe us. I owe you. I repeated. I don't owe you anything. You chose to have children. You chose to raise them, or in my case, chose not to. That was your decision. I don't owe you my house. I don't owe you my time. I don't owe you my life just because you kept me fed and clothed for 18 years. This is how you repay us, Dad said. After everything we've done. What have you done? Yes. Specifically, what have you actually done for me that I'm supposed to be so grateful for? You missed my graduation. You forgot my birthday 3 years in a row during high school. You didn't come to see my house for 3 months. You didn't call when I got promoted last year. You don't know the name of my best friend. You don't know what I do at work beyond something with numbers. You don't know anything about my life because you've never bothered to ask. So tell me, what exactly have you done that entitles you to my house? The silence that followed was crushing. Mom was crying openly now. But they weren't the manipulative tears from before. These were different. These were the tears of someone realizing they'd been caught. Dad's face had gone from red to gray. He looked older suddenly, deflated. We thought you understood, Mom whispered. Understood what? Yes. That Tyler mattered more. I understood that perfectly. I've understood that my entire life. Mom shook her head. That's not what we meant. Then what did you mean? Yes. Because from where I'm standing, you spent 29 years showing me exactly where I ranked in this family. And now you're mad that I'm not volunteering to prove you right by sacrificing everything I built to fix Tyler's problems. Dad tried one more time. His voice quieter now but still edged with anger. You're being vindictive. You're punishing us for mistakes we made years ago. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. I spent my entire childhood being invisible. I'm not spending my adult life the same way. I'm not selling my house. I'm not moving back into my childhood bedroom. I'm not raising Tyler's kids. You'll figure this out without me. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. So that's it. You're just going to abandon your family. No, I said. You abandoned me a long time ago. I'm just finally accepting it. 2 weeks of silence. 14 days where my phone stayed quiet except for work calls and texts from friends. No messages from Mom. No calls from Dad. Nothing from Tyler. First I felt guilty. That old, familiar guilt that had been programmed into me since childhood. The guilt that said I was supposed to fix things, supposed to smooth things over, supposed to make everyone else comfortable even when I was the one being hurt. I'd lie awake at night replaying the conversation, wondering if I'd been too harsh, if I should call and apologize, if maybe I should just give in to keep the peace. But then something else would surface. Memory. My 10th birthday when they forgot to get me a cake because they were at Tyler's tournament. The Christmas when I got 3 presents and Tyler got 15. The time I made honor roll and Mom said, "That's nice," and went back to watching Tyler's game footage. Every memory reinforced the same truth. I hadn't been too harsh. I'd been too quiet for too long. So I didn't call. I didn't apologize. I just lived my life. I went to work. I came home to my house. My house that I'd bought with my own money, that had my name on the deed, that represented every sacrifice I'd made to build something that was mine. I cooked dinner in my kitchen. I read books in my living room. I slept in my bedroom. And slowly, the guilt started to fade, replaced by something that felt almost like peace. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. Tyler's name lit up the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. We hadn't spoken since before the real estate agent incident. I assumed Mom and Dad had told him what happened, had probably painted me as the villain in their version of the story. "Hello," said cautiously. "Claire." His voice sounded strange, confused, maybe a little angry. "I'm at Mom and Dad's house. Can you explain to me what the hell is going on?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, his voice rising slightly, "I'm standing in their living room surrounded by boxes. Half-packed boxes. Moving boxes. And they're telling me you agreed to take the kids." The world tilted. "What?" "They said you're moving back home," Tyler continued. "That you're going to be the primary caregiver for Emma, Jackson, and Sophie so they can retire to Florida. They've been planning this for months apparently. They want to know when you want us to drop the kids off and when you want their stuff delivered." I felt my blood turn to ice. "Tyler, I never agreed to anything." There was a long pause. "What?" "I never agreed to take your kids," I said, my voice shaking now. "I told them no. Very clearly. Multiple times. I told them I wasn't selling my house, I wasn't moving back home, and I wasn't raising your children. They brought a real estate agent to my house without asking. I kicked her out and told them to figure this out on their own." Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear muffled voices in the background. Then Tyler's voice, no longer directed at me. "Did you hear that?" Then louder, angrier. "Did you hear that? She says she never agreed to any of this." The background noise erupted. I could hear my mother's voice rising in pitch, defensive and panicked. "She's lying. She's just being difficult. She agreed, she just doesn't want to admit it now." Tyler's voice cut through, sharp and furious. "She doesn't sound like she's lying, Mom. She sounds like she has no idea what you're talking about." "Tyler, please," my mother was saying. "You don't understand, she's just trying to make us look bad." "How much did you spend?" Tyler demanded. The question hung in the air. I pressed the phone closer to my ear, holding my breath. "How much did you spend on this Florida condo you're planning to move to?" Tyler's voice was deadly calm now. The kind of calm that came before an explosion. My father's voice joined in, gruff and defensive. "That's none of your concern. We're allowed to make plans for our retirement." "How much?" Tyler repeated. Silence. Then my mother quietly, almost too quietly to hear. $8,000. The deposit was $8,000. I heard Tyler inhale sharply. $8,000. You put down an $8,000 deposit on a condo in Florida based on a plan that you never actually confirmed with Claire. "We didn't need to confirm it," my mother said, her voice getting higher, more desperate. "She's family. She should want to help. She should." "She said no, Mom," Tyler shouted. "She explicitly told you no and you went ahead and made plans anyway. You put down $8,000 of your retirement savings based on something you made up in your head." "We didn't make it up," Dad said angrily. "We talked about it as a family." "You talked about it to each other," Tyler interrupted. "You never talked about it with her. You decided what she should do with her life and expected her to just go along with it. Do you realize how insane that is?" I sat frozen on my couch, listening to my family implode over speakerphone. "This is her fault," my mother said, crying now. "If she'd just help like family is supposed to, none of this would be happening. We've sacrificed everything for you kids and this is how she repays us." "Sacrificed everything?" Tyler's laugh was bitter. "You want to talk about sacrifice? Claire raised herself while you were at my football games. She put herself through college while you spent her college fund on my travel teams. She bought a house by herself while you didn't even notice she existed. And now you're mad that she won't give all of that up to fix my problems." There was a crash in the background. Something breaking. "Don't you dare," my mother said. "Don't you dare take her side. Is selfish. She's always been selfish. She's been invisible. Tyler shouted back. I was there, Mom. Remember. I remember her sitting alone at the kitchen table doing homework while you drove me to practice. I remember her walking to school in the rain because we took the car to my games. I remember her graduation that you missed. I remember. I was a kid and I remember. How do you not remember? The silence that followed was profound. Tyler, my father started. No, Tyler cut him off. Just no. I need to call Claire back. The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, my hand shaking, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. 30 seconds later, Tyler called back. Claire. His voice was different now. Exhausted. Yeah, I managed. I'm so sorry, he said. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know they were doing this. They told me you'd agreed. They said you talked it through and made a plan. They said you wanted to help. I never agreed to anything, I repeated. I know, he said. I know that now. Jesus Christ, Claire. $1,000. They put down $8,000 on a condo they can't afford based on a plan you never agreed to. The deposit is non-refundable. They're completely stranded. A small, terrible part of me felt something that might have been satisfaction. But mostly I just felt tired. That's not my problem, I said quietly. I know, Tyler said again. And it shouldn't be. None of this should be your problem. These are my kids. This is my mess. I'm the one who married someone who left. I'm the one who needs to figure this out. So what are you going to do? Yes. He sighed heavily. I don't know. I'll have to hire a nanny. I can't afford it, but I'll figure something out. Take on extra jobs. Sell some things. I don't know. But I can't keep letting Mom and Dad do this. They're killing themselves. And apparently, they've completely lost their minds if they thought this plan was going to work. There was another pause. Then Tyler said something I never expected to hear. I'm sorry, Claire. For all of it. For the childhood you didn't get because everything was about me. For not noticing. For not saying anything. I was a kid, but I was old enough to see it. I should have said something. I should have done something. My throat tightened. It wasn't your fault. You were a kid too. Maybe, he said. But I'm not a kid anymore. And I should have said this years ago. You deserved better. You deserved parents who saw you. I'm sorry they didn't. I couldn't speak for a moment. When I finally did, my voice was rough. Thank you. I mean it, Tyler said. And I mean this too, you don't owe me anything. You don't owe them anything. Whatever you decide to do with your life, it's yours. You earned it. Don't let them take it from you. We hung up a few minutes later. I sat in my living room as the sun set, my phone still in my hand, processing everything that had just happened. My parents had been planning this for months. They'd put down an $8,000 deposit. They'd told the entire family I'd agreed to take Tyler's kids. They'd packed boxes. They'd made arrangements. All without ever actually confirming with me that I'd agreed to any of it. The texts started arriving around 9 the next morning. My phone buzzed so constantly I finally had to turn off notifications just to think clearly. Aunt Linda. Heard about the situation with your parents. What happened? Uncle Rob. Your mom is devastated. Can you please call her? Cousin Jessica. I don't understand. I thought you agreed to help with Tyler's kids. Cousin Marcus. This is really messed up. They put down a huge deposit. The messages kept coming, each one a variation on the same theme. Confusion, concern, and underneath it all, an assumption that somehow this was my fault, that I had done something wrong, that I had made a promise and broken it. Nobody asked for my side of the story. Nobody asked if maybe, just maybe, there was more to this than what my parents had told them. I didn't respond to any of them. What was I supposed to say? That my parents had fabricated an entire plan based on a conversation that never happened. That they'd decided what I should do with my life and expected me to just comply. That they'd spent $8,000 on a retirement dream built on my forced sacrifice. Sounded crazy. Sounded like something out of a dysfunction manual. And yet, it was exactly what had happened. Around noon, I noticed a voicemail notification. My mother. The timestamp showed she'd called at 7:30 that morning. I'd been in the shower. I stared at the notification for a long time before finally pressing play. The message started with crying. Not quiet tears. Loud, gasping sobs that sounded almost theatrical. Then her voice, thick with emotion and something else. Something harder. "Claire, it's Mom. I can't believe you did this to us. I cannot believe you would destroy our retirement dreams like this. We've been planning this for months. We put down a deposit. We told everyone. We started packing. And now you're backing out and making us look like fools in front of the entire family." She paused, and I heard her blow her nose. Then she continued, her voice shifting from grief to anger. "You know what? I always knew you were selfish, but I never thought you'd be this cruel. We sacrificed everything for you kids. Everything. And this is how you repay us. By humiliating us. By making us lose $8,000. Do you have any idea what that money means to us? That was supposed to be our fresh start. Our chance to finally rest after decades of raising you and your brother." Another pause. Her breathing was heavy, labored. "Your father won't even talk to me right now. He's so angry. So disappointed. Tyler is scrambling to hire a nanny he can't afford. The kids are confused. Everyone is asking questions. And it's all because you couldn't just help your family for once in your selfish life. You have a 3-bedroom house, Claire. 3 bedrooms. And you're living there all alone while we're drowning trying to help your brother. What kind of person does that?" The words kept coming, each one designed to cut deeper than the last. "You've always been difficult. Always been stubborn. But I thought when it really mattered you'd step up. I thought family meant something to you. Guess I was wrong. I guess we wasted all those years raising you just to have you turn your back on us when we needed you most." Her voice dropped lower, more menacing. "You're going to regret this, Claire. You're going to look back on this moment and realize you destroyed your family over a house. Over space you don't even need. And when you're old and alone with nobody to take care of you, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember that you had a chance to be part of something bigger than yourself, and you chose yourself instead." The message ended abruptly. No goodbye. No love you. Just that final condemnation hanging in the air. I sat on my couch staring at my phone, listening to the silence of my house. My 3-bedroom house that I'd bought with my own money, that represented 6 years of sacrifice, that was mine. Played the message again. And then again. Not because I wanted to hurt myself, but because I needed to hear it with clear ears. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. And what I heard was this. My mother genuinely believed she was the victim in this story. She genuinely believed that I had wronged her. Not that she had made assumptions. Not that she had planned my life without consulting me. Not that she had spent $8,000 based on a conversation that never happened. Well, in her version of reality, I had made a promise and broken it. I had betrayed the family. I had chosen selfishness over love. She had rewritten the entire narrative in her head, and in that version she was blameless. It was stunning in a terrible way. The complete lack of self-awareness. The absolute refusal to consider that maybe, just maybe, they had made a mistake. I saved the voicemail. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because I had learned something important over the years. Document everything. Words can be denied later. Voicemails can't. Around 2 in the afternoon my dad called. I didn't answer. He left a message too. His was shorter, colder. "Claire, it's your father. Your mother is beside herself. You need to call her back and fix this. I don't know what game you're playing, but this family doesn't work if everyone just does whatever they want. We make sacrifices for each other. That's what family means. Call your mother back and apologize. Tell her you'll reconsider. We need you to step up." Step up. There it was again. That phrase that had followed me my entire life. Step up. Be responsible. Be the adult. Fix the problem. Never mind that the problem wasn't mine. Never mind that I hadn't created it. Never mind that stepping up meant sacrificing everything I'd built. I was supposed to step up because that's what I did. That was my role. Fixer. The invisible daughter who materialized when needed and disappeared when convenient. I didn't call back. Instead, I did something I should have done years ago. I started writing everything down. Not for them. For me. I opened a document on my laptop and started typing. Every memory. Every instance of being overlooked. Every time Tyler's needs came before mine. Every missed event. Every forgotten birthday. Every moment I'd been told I was independent, when what they really meant was inconvenient. I wrote for 3 hours straight. By the time I finished, I had 12 pages. 12 pages of moments I'd been carrying around like stones in my pockets, weighing me down without even realizing it. Reading it back was like looking at someone else's life. Surely one family couldn't have been that consistently negligent. Surely I was exaggerating, being dramatic, remembering things worse than they were. But I wasn't. Every incident was real. Every moment had happened exactly as I'd written it. The documentation didn't lie. That evening, Tyler called again. "Hey," he said. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," I said. "Liar," he said, but his tone was gentle. "I've been getting calls all day from relatives. Mom and Dad are telling everyone you backed out of an agreement. That you promised to help and changed your mind at the last minute." "I figured," I said. "For what it's worth," Tyler continued, "I've been telling people the truth. That there was no agreement. That they made assumptions and ran with them. Some people are listening. Some people don't want to hear it." "Thanks for trying," I said. "I mean it when I say you don't owe them anything," Tyler said. "I know they're spinning this like you're the villain. But I was there for that phone call. Heard you. You were clear as day. They're lying, Claire. And I'm not going to let them rewrite history." His words meant more than he probably knew. Having one person, even if it was the person whose mess had started all of this, acknowledge the truth made the weight a little lighter. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my back porch, looking at the small yard I'd landscaped myself last summer. The garden beds I'd built. The flowers I'd planted. The space that was mine. My phone buzzed again. Another text. This time from my mom directly. "We're losing the deposit. $1,000. Because of you. I hope you're happy." I read it twice. Then I typed back the only response that felt true. "I'm not happy. But I'm not responsible for your choices either." 3 dots appeared immediately. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then nothing. She didn't respond. I turned my phone face down on the table and watched the sun set behind the trees at the edge of my property line. The light turned everything golden for a moment before fading into purple dusk. Somewhere across town, my parents were dealing with the consequences of their assumptions. Somewhere, Tyler was figuring out childcare he couldn't afford. Somewhere, relatives were gossiping about what had happened and choosing sides. And here I was in my 3-bedroom house, alone but not lonely, tired but not broken, holding a boundary I should have set years ago. The family gathering wasn't supposed to happen. Or rather, I wasn't supposed to know about it. But my cousin Jessica, the one who'd texted asking what happened, called me 3 days after the voicemail incident. Her voice was quiet, almost conspiratorial. "Claire, I need to tell you something. There's a family meeting planned for this Sunday at your parents' house. They're calling everyone together to discuss the situation. I thought you should know." My stomach sank. "Did they invite me?" "No," Jessica said. "That's why I'm calling. They specifically said not to tell you. They want to talk about you, not to you." I think that's messed up. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Family meeting about me without me. To discuss my refusal to comply with a plan I'd never agreed to in the first place. This wasn't about finding a solution anymore. This was about controlling the narrative. About making sure everyone heard their version of events before I had a chance to defend myself. About painting me as the villain so completely that by the time I found out, it would be too late to change anyone's mind. I spent Saturday night deciding what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore it entirely. Let them have their meeting. Let them say whatever they wanted. I knew the truth. Tyler knew the truth. That should be enough. But another part of me, the part that had been silent for 29 years, said no. No more letting other people tell my story. No more staying quiet while they rewrote history. No more being the invisible daughter who didn't get a voice in her own life. Sunday morning I got dressed carefully. Not fancy but put together. Jeans and a nice sweater. I wanted to look calm, collected, unbothered. I drove to my parents' house and arrived at exactly 2 p.m., right when Jessica said the meeting was scheduled to start. I didn't knock. I used the key I'd had since high school, the one they'd never asked me to return because they'd never imagined I'd use it for anything that wasn't convenient for them. I walked in and the living room went silent. 12 people were crowded into the space. My parents, Tyler looking uncomfortable, 3 aunts, 2 uncles, 4 cousins, all of them staring at me like I'd just materialized out of thin air. My mother's face went white, then red. "What are you doing here?" "I heard there was a family meeting," I said calmly. "About me. I thought I should attend." My father stood up. "This is a private discussion. You weren't invited." "Funny how that works," I said. "A private discussion about my life, my choices, my house, and I'm not invited. Almost like you don't actually want the truth to come out." Uncle Rob cleared his throat. "Claire, your parents are just trying to explain what happened. There's been a lot of confusion. There's been a lot of lying," I corrected. "But please don't let me interrupt. What were you telling everyone?" My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Right on schedule. We were explaining how we tried to help your brother and you refused. How we made plans based on what we thought was a family agreement and you backed out." "Really?" Pulled out my phone. "What family agreement? Show me the text where I agreed. Show me the email. Show me any communication where I said yes to selling my house, moving back home, and raising Tyler's kids." Silence. My mother looked at my father. My father looked at the floor. "You didn't need to say it explicitly," Mom said finally. "We're family. Family helps each other. We thought you understood that." "So to be clear," I said, "you made an $8,000 financial decision based on something I never said, never agreed to, and explicitly refused when you brought a real estate agent to my house without permission. And somehow this is my fault." Aunt Linda spoke up. "Claire, honey, they're your parents. They raised you. Don't you think you owe them something?" "I owe them exactly what they gave me," I said. "The bare minimum. They kept me fed and clothed and enrolled in school. Legal requirement, not generosity. They missed my graduation for Tyler's game. They forgot my birthday multiple years in a row. They didn't visit my house for 3 months after I bought it. They've spent my entire life showing me I'm the backup plan. And now they're mad that I'm not volunteering to prove them right." Tyler was nodding slightly. My mother noticed. "Tyler, don't you dare take her side." "I'm not taking sides," Tyler said quietly. "I'm just acknowledging facts." "She's right, Mom. About all of it. I was there." My mother turned on him, her voice rising. "You have 3 kids who need care. Your wife left. You're drowning. And your sister won't help." "My sister doesn't have to help," Tyler said, and his voice was stronger now. "These are my kids. My responsibility. Not hers. I'm figuring it out." "With what money?" Dad demanded. "You can barely afford your mortgage." "I'll get a second job," Tyler said. "I'll sell things. I'll downsize. I'll figure it out like an adult. What I won't do is guilt my sister into giving up her life for my choices." The room erupted then. Voices overlapping. Aunt Linda saying something about family loyalty. Uncle Rob arguing that Claire had always been difficult. Cousin Marcus saying this was getting out of hand. My mother crying louder. My father demanding order. I stood in the middle of it, watching my family fracture in real time over a crisis they'd created. Finally I raised my voice. Not shouting but firm. "Enough." The room quieted. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. I'm going to say this once, and then I'm leaving. I'm not selling my house. I'm not moving back home. I am not raising Tyler's children. That has been my answer from the beginning. That is my answer now. That will be my answer tomorrow and every day after that. My mother opened her mouth. I held up a hand. I'm not finished. You don't get to rewrite this story. You don't get to tell people I made a promise I never made. You don't get to paint me as selfish for having boundaries. I spent 29 years being invisible in this family. Being the daughter who didn't need anything because it was easier for you to believe that than to actually see me. I'm done being invisible. Aunt Linda tried again. But Claire, they need help. Then help them, I said, turning to her. You have a house. You have space. If this is such an important family obligation, you take Tyler's kids. You sell your house and move in with mom and dad. You sacrifice your life. Her mouth snapped shut. That's what I thought, I said. It's easy to tell someone else to sacrifice everything. It's harder when you're the one being asked to give up what you've built. I looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. Anyone else want to volunteer? Anyone else want to sell their house and become a full-time caregiver? No. Then stop asking me to do it. The silence was deafening. My father's voice was cold when he finally spoke. If you walk out that door, you're not welcome back. I looked at him for a long moment. Good, I said. Because I wasn't planning on coming back. I turned and walked toward the door. My mother's voice followed me, shrill and desperate. You're going to regret this. You're going to end up old and alone with no one to take care of you. Don't come crying to us when you need help. I stopped at the door and turned back one last time. I've been alone my whole life, I said quietly. I raised myself while you raised Tyler. I put myself through college. I bought my house by myself. I've been handling my life without you for years. The only difference now is I'm finally admitting it out loud. Tyler stood up. Claire, wait. Pause. He walked over to me, and for a moment I thought he was going to ask me to stay, to reconsider, to give in. Instead, he hugged me. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For showing me what boundaries look like, he said. For not setting yourself on fire to keep everyone else warm. I needed to see that. He pulled back and looked me in the eye. I hired a nanny yesterday. It's expensive, but I'll make it work. The kids will be okay. You don't have to worry about us. Something in my chest loosened. Thank you, I said. He nodded and stepped back. I walked out of my parents' house for what I knew would be the last time. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like the end of a chapter I'd been trying to finish for years. I sat in my car for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel, my breath coming in short bursts. Then my phone buzzed. Text from Jessica. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. I'm sorry they're like this. You deserve better. Then another text, this time from Tyler. Mom just said you're dead to her. Dad's backing her up. I told them that's their loss. I meant it. I started the car and drove home. Not to my parents' house. Not to my childhood bedroom. To my 3-bedroom house that I'd bought with my own money. To the space I'd created for myself. To the life I'd built without their help or their approval. When I walked inside, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel relieved. I felt exhausted. Bone-deep tired in a way that had nothing to do with the confrontation, and everything to do with the 29 years of carrying weight that was never mine to carry. I made dinner. Took a shower. I got into bed in my own house, in my own room, in my own life. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't feel guilty about it. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 34 text messages. My parents had launched a full-scale campaign. They'd told the extended family I'd attacked them at the meeting, that I'd been cruel and vindictive, that I'd humiliated them in front of everyone. The messages from relatives ranged from sympathetic to hostile. Some people believed my parents' version. Some people didn't care enough to pick a side. And just a few, sent messages of support. The message came from my cousin Ethan. He was 35, an accountant like me, and we'd always gotten along in that distant see you at holidays kind of way. We weren't close, but we weren't strangers either. His text was short and to the point. Claire, can we talk? Not about the drama. About something else. Call me when you can. I called him that afternoon, curious and a little wary. Hey, he said when he picked up. Thanks for calling back. I know things are crazy right now. That's one word for it, I said. What's going on? He was quiet for a moment, and I heard papers rustling in the background. Look, I don't know if this matters or if I should even be telling you this, but after that meeting yesterday, I started thinking. Something your mom said didn't sit right with me. Just one thing. Asked dryly. He laughed, but it was strained. Fair point. But specifically, she kept talking about their retirement savings. About how they'd lost $8,000 and it was devastating. And I realized I've heard her talk about money problems before. Multiple times over the past few years. My stomach tightened. Okay. So I did some digging, Ethan continued. Not illegal digging. Just publicly available information. Property records. That kind of thing. Claire, did you know your parents took out a second mortgage on their house 3 years ago? I sat up straighter. What? Well, they never mentioned that. $250,000, Ethan said. Against a house that was paid off. I don't know what they needed the money for, but that's a significant amount of debt for people in their early 60s who are supposed to be planning retirement. My mind was racing. How do you know this? Property records are public, he said. Anyone can look them up. I pulled theirs yesterday because something felt off. The second mortgage was filed 3 years ago. And here's the other thing, they're behind on payments. Not catastrophically behind, but enough that there are notices. Felt cold. How behind? About 4 months, Ethan said. Look, I'm telling you this because I think there's more to this whole situation than them just being tired of watching Tyler's kids. I think they're in financial trouble. Real trouble. And I think they were counting on you selling your house and moving in with them so they could use your income to keep themselves afloat. The pieces started falling into place with sickening clarity. The insistence on me selling my house. The pre-planned schedule where I'd be responsible for Tyler's kids before work, meaning they assumed I'd keep my job and keep earning money. The Florida condo deposit they couldn't afford to lose. The desperation in my mother's voice when she talked about their retirement being destroyed. This wasn't about family helping family. This was about financial survival. They needed my money. Claire. Ethan's voice broke through my thoughts. You still there? Yeah, I said. I'm here. Just processing. I figured you should know, he said. Especially with the way they're going after you publicly. It's not just about childcare. It's about money. It's always been about money. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Then I did what I should have done weeks ago. I started looking at the full picture. I pulled up property records myself, confirming what Ethan had told me. The second mortgage was real. $250,000 at 6.2% interest. Monthly payments of around $2,000. 4 months behind meant they owed at least $8,000 in back payments, not counting late fees and penalties. Then I started thinking about other things. The comments over the years about how well I was doing. The questions about my salary. The casual mentions of how comfortable I must be. The way my mother always perked up when I mentioned a raise or a bonus. I thought she was just being supportive, proud even. Now I realized she was calculating. I thought back to the conversations about Tyler's situation. They'd framed it as being exhausted from watching the kids. But now I wondered, were they watching the kids to help Tyler? Or were they watching the kids because Tyler was helping them? Was he paying them? Was that income they were counting on? Called Tyler. Quick question, I said when he answered. Are you paying mom and dad for childcare? He hesitated. Yeah, $500 a week. It's cheaper than a daycare center and I thought I was helping them out. Why? $500 a week. $2,000 a month. Exactly the amount of their mortgage payment. No reason, I lied. Just curious. But it wasn't no reason. It was everything. The whole picture came into focus with brutal clarity. My parents had taken out a massive second mortgage 3 years ago. I didn't know why. Maybe medical bills, maybe bad investments, maybe just living beyond their means for too long. Whatever the reason, they were drowning in debt. Tyler's childcare payments were keeping them barely afloat, covering their mortgage payments but leaving nothing for anything else. Then Melissa left, and my parents saw an opportunity. If they could get me to sell my house and move in with them, they'd accomplish multiple things. First, I'd take over the childcare, freeing them from the physical exhaustion. Second, and more importantly, I'd be paying rent or contributing to household expenses. My income would supplement theirs. My money would fill the gap that Tyler's $500 a week couldn't cover. And if they could get me to sell my house, a 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood that I'd bought for $320,000 and that was now worth at least $400,000, maybe they were even planning to ask me for a loan from the proceeds. A loan that would never be repaid. The Florida retirement condo wasn't a dream. It was an escape plan. They'd found a cheap place in a retirement community, probably assuming that once I was established as Tyler's caregiver and contributing financially, they could slip away and leave me holding the bag. The $8,000 deposit wasn't their retirement savings. It was probably borrowed money, or the last of whatever they had left, a desperate gamble that I'd comply. I sat in my living room as the sun set, staring at the property records on my laptop screen, feeling something shift in my understanding of the past few months. Every conversation, every hint, every guilt trip. It had all been leading to this. Not a family helping family. A calculated attempt to solve their financial crisis by sacrificing my financial security. I thought about calling them, confronting them with what I'd learned, demanding answers. But what would be the point? They'd deny it. They'd spin it. They'd make it about something else, about Tyler needing help, about family loyalty, about my selfishness. They'd never admit that they'd been planning to use me as a financial safety net. The next morning I called a lawyer. Not to sue my parents, but to protect myself. I explained the situation. The pressure to sell my house, the family drama, the discovery of their financial problems. The lawyer listened carefully and then gave me advice that felt both paranoid and necessary. Document everything, she said. Every text, every voicemail, every conversation. If they're in financial distress, there's a possibility they might try to claim you made verbal agreements or promises. Keep records showing you've been consistent in saying no. Also, make sure your house deed and financial accounts are secure. If they have any documentation with your signature, old tax returns, anything, make sure they can't use it inappropriately. Followed her advice. I changed my bank passwords. I put alerts on my credit report. I saved every text message, every voicemail, every email. I created a folder on my computer labeled Documentation and backed it up to the cloud. Felt excessive. It felt like I was preparing for war with my own parents. But Ethan's information had changed everything. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or family dysfunction anymore. This was about money. And people did desperate things when money was involved. That afternoon I got a call from my mother. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail. Her voice was different this time. Not angry. Not crying. Almost, come. Claire, it's Mom. I think we need to talk. Really talk. Not argue. Just talk. I realized things got heated at the family meeting. Maybe we all said things we didn't mean. Why don't you come over this week? We can sit down, just the 3 of us, and work this out like adults. I'm sure we can find a solution that works for everyone. I played the message 3 times, listening for subtext. The calmness felt manufactured. The invitation felt like a trap. A solution that works for everyone meant a solution where they got what they wanted. I didn't call back. Instead, I texted, "I'm not interested in talking. My answer hasn't changed. I'm not selling my house or moving in with you. There's nothing to work out." 3 dots appeared immediately. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, "We're your parents. You owe us a conversation at least." I typed back, "I don't owe you anything. Please stop contacting me." The response came fast. Fine. But don't come crying to us when you realize what you've done. We won't be here for you anymore. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed, "You were never there for me anyway. This changes nothing." I blocked her number. Then I blocked my father's. It felt radical and final and absolutely necessary. That evening, Tyler called from a number I didn't recognize. "They're calling me from Mom's phone now since you blocked them," he said. "I told them I wouldn't pass along messages. Just wanted to give you a heads up." "Thanks," I said. Then carefully, "Tyler, can I ask you something? The $500 a week you pay them for childcare. Do you know what they're using it for?" He was quiet for a moment. "Their mortgage, I think." "Why? Did they ever tell you they took out a second mortgage 3 years ago?" Silence. Long silence. "What? $250,000, I said. "They're 4 months behind on payments." I heard him exhale sharply. Jesus Christ. That's why they're so desperate. They need my payments to keep the house. And they were planning to use you. To supplement, I finished. "Yeah. I figured that out today." "Claire, I'm so sorry," he said. "I had no idea. If I'd known they were using my childcare payments to cover a mortgage, I don't know what I would have done, but I wouldn't have let them rope you into this." "It's not your fault," I said. "You were paying for a service. You didn't know the bigger picture." "Neither did you," he pointed out. "And they were counting on that." We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the scope of what our parents had been planning. Finally, Tyler said, "What are you going to do?" "Nothing," I said. "I'm going to live my life. I'm going to keep my house. I'm going to keep my job. I'm going to keep my boundaries. Whatever happens to them financially is their problem, not mine." "Good," Tyler said firmly. "That's exactly what you should do." 3 months passed. 3 months of silence from my parents, broken only by occasional attempts to reach me through relatives who didn't know I'd blocked them. 3 months of my phone not ringing with guilt trips and manipulations. 3 months of living in my 3-bedroom house without apologizing for it. And in those 3 months, I watched from a distance as the consequences of their choices unfolded exactly as they should have. The first thing I heard came from Aunt Linda, who called me despite knowing I'd requested distance from the family drama. Her voice was careful, measured. "Claire, I'm not calling to take sides. I just thought you should know. Your parents are selling the house." Felt nothing. No shock. No satisfaction. Just a quiet acknowledgement that the inevitable had arrived. "Okay," I said. "When?" "They listed it 2 weeks ago. They're moving into a smaller place. Rental. Your mom is devastated, but your dad says it's the practical choice." Practical. The word almost made me laugh. There was nothing practical about taking out a $250,000 second mortgage in your late 50s. There was nothing practical about spending $8,000 on a non-refundable deposit based on a plan that was never confirmed. There was nothing practical about burning bridges with the daughter you were counting on to fund your lifestyle. But I didn't say any of that to Aunt Linda. I just thanked her for letting me know and ended the call. The second update came from Tyler a week later. "Mom called me crying," he said. "She wanted to know if I could increase the childcare payments. Said they were losing the house and needed help." My chest tightened. "What did you tell her?" "I told her no," Tyler said, and his voice was firm. "I told her I hired a full-time nanny 2 months ago and the kids are settled. I told her I appreciated everything they'd done, but I couldn't afford to pay them anymore. I couldn't afford to pay them in the first place. I was just doing it because I thought it helped everyone." "How did she react?" "Yes. She said I was abandoning them just like you did," Tyler said. "She said both her kids turned out selfish and ungrateful. I told her that wasn't fair and that maybe if she'd planned better, she wouldn't be in this situation. Then she hung up on me. I felt a pang of something. Not quite guilt, but an echo of the old instinct to fix things, to smooth things over, to make everyone comfortable even at my own expense. Pushed it down. "I'm sorry you're dealing with this," I said. "Don't be," Tyler replied. I needed to hear myself say no to her. I've been saying yes my whole life because it was easier. Because they made everything about what I needed and I just accepted it without questioning whether it was healthy. You showed me it was possible to set boundaries. I'm just following your example. After we hung up, I sat with that conversation for a long time. Tyler was setting boundaries. The golden child, the favorite, the one everything had revolved around. He was stepping back. And my parents were losing both their children in the same year. Not because we were cruel, but because they'd built a family dynamic that only worked if we never questioned it. The third update came from Jessica, who'd been keeping me loosely informed without being invasive. Your parents' house sold, she texted. They're moving next month. Your mom posted on Facebook about downsizing for retirement, but everyone knows it's because of money problems. Your dad looks 10 years older every time I see him. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. A week later I drove past their house, my childhood home, and saw the sold sign. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I just kept driving, noting absently that someone else would live there now. Someone else's kids would grow up in those rooms. Maybe they'd be seen. Maybe they'd matter. Maybe their parents would show up to their graduations. The financial unraveling continued quietly over the following weeks. I heard through the family grapevine that my parents had moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex 30 minutes outside the city. Cheaper rent, smaller space, no yard. My mother had apparently cried through the entire move. My father had packed boxes in grim silence. They'd sold furniture, downsized possessions, cut their life down to what would fit in 900 square feet. Part of me waited to feel guilty, waited for the voice that had ruled my childhood to whisper that this was my fault, that I could have prevented this, that I should have helped. But that voice never came. Or maybe it came and I'd finally learned not to listen. Because their financial crisis wasn't caused by me refusing to sell my house. It was caused by them taking out a mortgage they couldn't afford, making financial decisions without proper planning, and assuming they could use their children as safety nets instead of building actual stability. Tyler called me one evening about 4 months after the family meeting. I saw them today, he said. Ran into them at the grocery store. It was awkward as hell. How did they seem? Yes. Old, he said. Tired. Mom tried to hug me and I let her, but it felt weird. Forced. Dad asked about the kids. I showed him pictures. He asked if I'd talk to you. Said yes. He asked if you'd changed your mind about anything. Said no. Then Mom said something about how you destroyed the family and Dad told her to stop. They paid for their groceries and left. I'm sorry, I said, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. Don't be, Tyler said. They made their choices. We made ours. That's how this works. He was right. This was how it worked. Actions had consequences. Manipulation had limits. Eventually, people stopped being willing to set themselves on fire to keep others warm. And when that happened, the people who'd been depending on that sacrifice had to figure out how to generate their own heat. 6 months after I'd walked out of that family meeting, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. An actual letter, handwritten, delivered to my mailbox in a plain envelope. My mother's handwriting on the front. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. The letter was 2 pages long. It started with Dear Claire and ended with Your mother instead of Love, Mom. The contents were exactly what I expected and somehow still managed to disappoint me. She wrote about how hard the past 6 months had been. How they'd lost their home. How they were living in a small apartment now. How my father's health was suffering from the stress. How she couldn't sleep at night thinking about the family being fractured. She wrote about sacrifice and duty and family loyalty. She wrote about how parents shouldn't have to beg their children for help. She wrote about how disappointed she was in the person I'd become. And then in the final paragraph she wrote, I'm asking one last time. If you have any love for us at all, please reconsider. We don't need you to move in anymore. We just need financial help. $1,000 a month would make the difference between us surviving and us losing everything. You have a good job. You have savings. You could afford it. Please, Claire. Don't let pride destroy what's left of this family. $1,000 a month. $12,000 a year. Money they wanted me to hand over indefinitely to subsidize a lifestyle they couldn't afford, to patch holes in a budget they destroyed themselves, to enable them to avoid the full consequences of their decisions. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in my fireplace and burned it. I didn't respond. I didn't call. I didn't send money. I did nothing. Because doing nothing was the most powerful choice I'd ever made. A week later, Tyler called. "Did you get a letter from Mom?" "Yeah," I said. "Did you?" "Yeah. She asked me for money too. $500 a month. Said it was the least I could do after everything they'd done for me." "What did you tell her?" "Yes." "I told her no," he said. "I told her I have 3 kids to support and a nanny to pay and a mortgage of my own. I told her I was sorry they were struggling, but I couldn't fix it for them. Then I told her maybe she should get a financial counselor and figure out a real budget instead of asking her kids to fund her retirement." "How did she take it?" "She hung up on me," Tyler said. "Then she sent me a text saying I was just like you. Cold, selfish, ungrateful." I blocked her number after that. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Tyler said something that made everything click into place. "You know what I realized? They never actually loved us. They loved what we could do for them. I was the golden child because I made them look good. You were the invisible child because you didn't need anything, which made their lives easier. And now that neither of us is playing those roles anymore, they don't know what to do with us." He was right. The relationship had always been transactional, conditional, based not on who we were but on what we provided. And the moment we stopped providing it, the relationship evaporated like it had never been real in the first place. "I'm weirdly okay with that," I said. "Me too," Tyler agreed. "It hurts less than I thought it would. Maybe because it confirms what I always suspected but was afraid to admit." A year after the family meeting, I was sitting on my back porch on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee and reading a book, when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is your father. Your mother is in the hospital. Heart attack. She's stable but asking for you. I think you should come." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me, the old part, the conditioned part, felt the familiar pull of obligation. "Your mother is in the hospital. You should go. That's what good daughters do." But another part of me, the part that had been growing stronger over the past year, asked a different question. Why? Why should I go? So she could guilt-trip me from a hospital bed. So I could be manipulated into feeling responsible for her stress-related health problems. So my father could corner me and demand money while my mother was too weak to leave. I typed back. "I hope she recovers. I won't be coming." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, "You really are heartless." I didn't respond. I turned off my phone, picked up my book and kept reading. Because the truth was, I wasn't heartless. I had plenty of heart. I'd spent 29 years offering it to people who'd never valued it. Now I was saving it for people who did. For friends who showed up. For colleagues who respected me. For Tyler, who'd done the work to understand what had been broken and was actively trying to heal it. For myself. For the life I'd built in this 3-bedroom house that represented every sacrifice I'd made to become someone who didn't need parents who'd never wanted to be needed. So here's my question for you. Did my parents cross a line, or was I the selfish one? Drop a comment and tell me. Have you ever been the backup plan? The one they only remember when they need something? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your sanity? What did you do? And if you're still stuck in that pattern, still setting yourself on fire to keep others warm, let this be your permission to stop. You don't owe anyone your life just because they gave you theirs. Family loyalty is a two-way street. And if they're not walking toward you, stop running after them. Hit subscribe if this story hit home. Share it if you know someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the strongest boundary you can set is the one that protects your peace. Even if it costs you everyone who can't respect it. Especially then.